Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Arrow as well as the latest episode of Legion. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you don't want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows I'm talking about. That way you can skip to whatever you want to listen to. For example, if you don't want to hear what I have to say about Arrow, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Legion. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Arrow. Big storyline in this episode was the fact is that Oliver talked to the lady that is Prometheus's mom, and it's like, oh, help us, your son is basically going off killing people, which she's like, no, my son, I'm not going to help you take down my son, like, which I kind of get. It's like, well, there's the side of the fact is that your son is killing innocent people, so we have to wonder, is like, why are you okay with that? But at the same time, it's like, I get it, it's also your son, you're willing to protect him, but going back to point A, like, your son is around killing innocent people. Let's not forget when he was getting to Tobias, he dropped a lot of cops going at it. It's like they were just doing their job and he killed them just because they were in his way. And it's like, she's like, oh, the fact of the matter is, the fact is, oh, what about that psychopath that put an arrow in his father? We're just like, yeah, I get it. Your son's damaged. He wants revenge and everything, but it's like, it's fine in Danny wanting revenge, but it's like when other people become collateral damage. I know it's ironic because that's kind of the whole point. That's the whole reason behind all this, because they show the collateral damage that is created by you doing this type of thing. It's kind of, the point is he's, like I said, mirror image of Oliver and what Oliver did. And kind of, I mean, not like Oliver went after anyone innocent. So it's not like Prometheus' dad was innocent, but still he shouldn't have gone about things the way he did. But I mean, there's no turning back time. I mean, Legends of Tomorrow and Flash would say otherwise, but without consequences, there's no turning things back. So I'm wondering why. I mean, obviously there is the paternal instinct to protect your child. There's obviously something there. Like, she is still in contact with him because that's what they're obviously looking into. Because obviously she must still be in contact with him because like you're going above and beyond because they don't know what Prometheus actually looks like, because they don't know Prometheus's actual name, because he's basically scrubbed himself from all the records, kind of fitting the image of him being a ghost, the ghost of Oliver's past coming back to haunt them, essentially. But it's like, to go to the extremes that she's doing, like, there are innocent people dying, and it's like, why are you so okay with that? That blows my mind. And it doesn't even seem like she has a conflict to her. I mean, like, we've only got that one scene with her, but it just seemed like she was so steadfast. I'm like, I'm gonna protect my son no matter what. It's like, I'm not gonna let you ruin his life. What do you mean ruin his life? He kind of created, I mean, granted, he didn't create the life he's got now. That's thanks to Oliver and everything, but still, it's like, your son's a bad person that needs to be locked up. Because even Oliver's not trying to go out of it. I mean, you could argue Oliver at one point in time wanted to kill him, hence the whole Billy situation, which played a big part in this episode, but I'll get to that soon enough. So, but then again, it's like, I feel like Oliver's, still trying to go back to being that good person again, trying to prove Prometheus wrong, so he's not going to kill Prometheus. I believe he's going to arrest Prometheus because it'd be the right thing to do. I mean, especially considering the last two bad guys he went up against, he killed Ra's al Ghul, and he also killed Damien Dark. So the two big baddies that was in his way, he killed. I mean, granted, Slade's still alive. Another piece of this episode, as we know, Susan found out about Oliver's identity, was it like the episode before last, and she actually confronts Oliver about it. She's like, hey, are you the Green Arrow? He's like, what? No, you're crazy. Oh, I thought we were joking. No, you're right. Yeah. Ha ha ha. And then, he tells Thea tells Felicity, which they both work together and basically destroy Susan's reputation. They basically make it seem like, oh, she lied about all these, like, all her past stories that she fabricated, like, made up stories and stuff like that, maybe fabricated her sources and stuff like that, basically undermining her entire job as a reporter. It was just because it was their way of discrediting her, because it's like she had all this information, she had all the clues tying Oliver to being, with the Bratva, with being Green Arrow, being the vigilante and all that. So, and then going back to it, Susan found out, like, oh, she got fired from her job, and with these circumstances, it's going to be nearly impossible to get a job now, too. So, she confronts Oliver, which Oliver didn't have anything to do with it. He really didn't know anything about it. But, for Susan, she's like, I'm not going to have you sit here and lie to me. It's like, those tattoos on you. I know that tattoo on you means you're part of the Bratva. She's like, so, and I know you're the Green Arrow and everything. You can sit there and lie to me. If you're going to lie, don't say anything to me. So it jeopardizes this good relationship he had going for him, which Oliver really gets pissed at Thea because it's like, why did you do that? She's like, I was doing it for your sake. It's like she was going, Thea didn't want things to go as far as they did, which Oliver is like, yeah, you did, because it's like you would have done a little less. I mean, granted, who's to say it was 100% Thea's idea? I mean, and the sad thing is Felicity didn't catch as much flack because I guess more so than anything, it was 100% Thea's idea, the way that bounces out, because she's the one that came to Felicity about it. So I'm sure Felicity kind of only did what Thea, but like I said, like Oliver didn't really go off on Felicity as much as he did Thea. I guess it's because on some level he expected more from Thea, like to do this because the whole thing was her idea. I mean, it's understandable why Thea did it, because she's like, I'm trying to protect my brother. It's like, the world finding out your secret is going to basically jeopardize everything you've done over all this time. She could out you as a reporter. But the thing about it is, though, like, she's known about the Bratva angle for a while now, but she didn't act upon it. So, but then again, you also add in the fact is maybe she, playing devil's advocate, maybe she was hoping, obviously she got the better story by holding off on that Bratva thing because she pieced the whole Green Arrow thing together too. So, but it's like, the fact is, she went to Oliver first. She actually asked him. So there is a part of her that does seem like she legitimate. Like, I went from the very beginning was like, dude, like, this is all a ploy. She doesn't actually care about it. But it's like, no, it seems like she legitimately cares about Oliver. She wanted to get the truth from him first. Because I think she would have wanted to run the story, but she wanted to get his side of things first, get his story, and put him like, oh, no. What we can do is, now I can help you put yourself out there. You don't have to worry about it. It's like, oh, you're mirror by day, superhero by night type of thing. I mean, that's arguably one way it could go, but that basically there are ramifications for what Thea does. I mean, later on in the episode, it comes up, I'll go right to it. The fact is that the whole scandal thing comes out about Oliver covering up the whole Billy situation that, the whole Green Arrow aspect of it hasn't come out, but basically it's like, oh, Oliver covered up this scandal. It's like, oh, you could argue like maybe it was connected to Susan, which I highly doubt it, because Susan might not. How would Susan get that information? I mean, arguably she could get that information and try and do that, but it's like she's pissed at Oliver, but I don't think she'd go to that extreme. I mean, it's like, yeah, her career was destroyed, so it's like, why not destroy Oliver's career as a mayor? But I'm thinking more so than anything, it's Prometheus, because Prometheus is the one that brought it to the cops' attention in the first place, being like, yo, the fact of the matter is, Billy was killed by the Green Arrow, and the fact is, a lot of people covered it up. It's kind of, Pike is like sure going after everyone. He's like, no, I've got to look into this. Like, this is one of our own. Even to the point that the cops were getting in the way of him tracking down our three escapees this episode. That being Liz, played by, she popped up last season. She's the actress the actress who played Tara from True Blood plays her. I forgot her name. I just refer to her as Cupid. I don't even know if that's her like actual moniker. And then there was also, I forgot her name. She's played by Kelly Hu, and she has the white hair. Basically, all three of them broke out. Apparently, it's all about Tobias's like stash of money, because he has some stashed away, like kind of when he was doing things. But it's like the cops were so concerned about getting Oliver, Green Arrow, that they didn't bother to go after the other two bad guys who were there. It's like, that's kind of crappy on your part. I get he killed a cop and everything, but it's like, there are like two escape people over there who also killed cops when they escape. It's like, you letting them get away. It's like, but I guess, Green Arrow kind of takes priority, which, Oliver at first was kind of backing down, but it took Lance speaking to him and being like, yo, kind of following something Thea had talked to him about, because he basically took responsibility for Liz, the actress, she basically is like, oh, the reason why she's acting the way she is now is because like, oh, she found out about Quentin working with Dark, and it's like, oh, he's doing it, you do whatever you need to do to survive situation. Basically saying like, oh, like I turn myself in willingly, thinking, okay, I'll turn myself around for you, but it's like, now I find out you're actually working with a terrorist. It's like, I'm gonna go off and do it. It's like, how does that justify you doing what you're doing, like killing a lot of innocent people? Like, the fact is, that's something that Lance will have to live with. The fact is that he worked with Dark, and Dark killed and hurt a lot of people. It's like, yeah, he has to live with that. Everyone knows about it now. So, but all he can do now is make a better try and make the best of the situation and just kind of redeem himself for it. You know, it's kind of like interesting because obviously there's a big parallels between Oliver and Lance. And it's like, especially in this season, because it's like redemption and everything. Oliver, you know, trying to make up for the mistakes he made in the past, you know, so, Prometheus situation, but with Lance, it's like the whole dark situation. It's like, yes, Laura was being threatened, but it still didn't justify him doing what he did. So he still has to make up for that. Was like I was saying, Thea was like, you don't need to take responsibility for everything. It's like, she is a criminal. She made that choice on her own. She's just using you as an excuse to justify what she's doing, which is like, to me, it's like, yeah, that's pretty stupid of her to do that. It's like what? It's like, oh, like you were already doing criminal things, you know, when you originally were caught. You just, you know, you're in control of your own actions. So what if Quentin ended up going off and working with Dark or whatever? And it's like, he had his own reason. He had good reason to. Doesn't mean it was a good idea, but it was still, he still has his own reasons for it. But it's like, what is your justification? It's like, oh, he did something bad, so I should obviously do something bad. It's like, that's not how that works. It doesn't justify your own actions, which he kind of calls her out for later on in the episode. But the advice that Quentin had gave to Oliver, because basically, like, you haven't backed down from anyone else. He's like, you know, you didn't back down from Dark, you didn't back down from Slade. It's like, these were people, you know, when the going got tough, you didn't back down. It's like, don't let Prometheus stop you from doing your job. It's like, yeah, he might try and throw stuff in your way, but it's like, you have to bring him to justice, essentially. So, which luckily at the end of it all, when it was all said and done, because Oliver came to Pike and explained the situation, and even Pike's like, so what do you want me to do? He's like, basically, I have to sit here and think about it. It's like, he understands that Green Arrow was tricked and everything. It's like, but he still killed a cop, which Oliver's like, in fact, this Green Arrow had to live with that for the rest of his life. And it's always interesting, like, I think I've brought that up before. It's always interesting when heroes like it's very different when it comes to Oliver having to talk about your superhero persona, because it's like with Barry's situation, it can all be like, oh yeah, you know, the Flash is pretty amazing. I definitely see it a lot with Wally and Kid Flash. It's like, well, I've been like, yeah, man, Kid Flash is pretty amazing, right? But it's like for Oliver, he has to like talk about his persona in a different way, like, because usually it's him justifying an action, being like, the fact of the matter is, you know, he's kind of all this city has. Not all this city has, but he's a big inspiration for the city. So we have to let him continue doing what he's doing. The fact is, he does good work, and it's like he wouldn't just out of nowhere kill an innocent person. So, I mean, he'll just have to live with the fact is that he killed Billy. Which Lance is like, oh, that's not on you. It's like, even for Oliver, it's like, yeah, he was tricked and everything, but you could also argue it was his need to kill Prometheus, his need to kind of like that darkness in his heart kind of kicking in to immediately take that action. If he wasn't in such a need to kill Prometheus, that wouldn't have happened. He would have taken Prometheus in and found out like, oh, Billy, like this. Like, it's a sad thing is he was cornered and forced to make that decision. But if it was like a situation where it was kind of like, if he had taken Prometheus in, like kind of the more justice route, then things wouldn't have worked out that way. Billy would still be alive. So. But like I said, at the same time, the whole scandal's coming out now too, and it's like, what's that? Like, you know, it's like he got himself as Green Arrow out of trouble, but now he's landed even more in hot water with this whole situation as mayor. Also, that whole conversation with Thea, like, the fact of the matter is, it's like, the fact is, it wasn't a wrong decision. Not necessarily like you did you made the wrong choice. It's like the fact is you made a well, I don't know how to phrase it, but basically saying what Thea did, she made a choice. It's kind of like, oh, you remind me of Mom. If Mom was in this particular situation, she probably would have done the same thing. But the thing is, that would be the wrong thing to do. And he's like, I'm here because I'm worried about my little sister. I guess it's because if any of this gets trailed back to her, I think that's what he's worried about. Or the fact is that, you know, she did such a dirty thing to, you know, kind of deal with this whole situation. I mean, truth be told is, I am very curious to know what Oliver would have done if they had come to him about this information. So, like, what does he plan on doing with the whole Susan situation going forward? She won't talk to him, won't answer his calls. So I'm very curious. I'm like, part of me is wondering, is like, is she going to like publish the story anyway? I mean, even if she did, no one would believe her. She's very discredited. But it's like, what does that mean for Oliver? Something that keeps popping up in my, I think I brought it up in a past episode, and it's still nagging me. It's like, what if we end up finding out Prometheus isn't actually a boy, but it's actually a girl? So, you know, I kind of threw it out there. What if it actually is Susan? I mean, she happens to pop up around the same time. It's like the whole Adrian situation. I'm not concerned about it because I already know he's vigilante. So, but then it pushes like it makes Susan very suspicious. Maybe that's kind of another way of attacking. Go what now I thought about too. We've seen like Prometheus kind of in action. We haven't seen what Evelyn's been up to. It's like, what is she up? Because she was so dead set on bringing Oliver down to and his entire team. So it just kind of makes me wonder where that's going on all of a sudden. I guess she's being, I guess, put on the sidelines by Prometheus. Because I think the last time we saw her was when she revealed herself as a traitor. So. But I'm starting to think, like, what if Prometheus is actually like Susan? I mean, could be attacking Oliver on a different front, hitting him as Prometheus, but also destroying his life as trying to get control of his heart and everything. It's like, I don't know, maybe she's actually playing it up in like, oh, like she doesn't know all this when in fact she knows everything. Or maybe the fact that she doesn't quite know everything, and so now she's slowly learning more and more about Oliver's past, about his whole 5-year experience with the Bratva and everything now, so. Like I said, I brought that up before, but then I was kind of quickly to shut it down. Now I'm like, I don't know. What if they could be lying about the whole son angle? What if he didn't actually have a son, that he actually had a daughter? I mean, hell, what do we end up finding out? The fact is that they actually had twins. That the fact is that maybe the brother is actually dead, and now Susan's actually the twin sister, or maybe she's just a sister in general that's kind of taking up the mantle, pretending to be her brother to get revenge, not only for him, because maybe things didn't work out in life for him because of dealing with the whole dad situation. So it's like things were tough for them. I mean, because the fact is, their mom, like, Prometheus's mom is the mistress. So it's not like she was like, so that couldn't have been an easy thing. She was just the mistress. So what does that mean? Like, I don't know whether it was a situation where she she was always kept on the side, but she was never like the main part of the family. Like, he was married and everything. So what about his wife? Did they get divorced or something? Like, so maybe they didn't have a good upbringing. I don't know. It's just my thoughts about that. It's like, it's just with each time, like, either they're setting up Susan to kind of be a situation where it's like, Prometheus is like, choose between, stopping me and saving Susan, essentially. So, but like I said, I also brought up the fact that I am very curious, will he actually tell her the truth? I mean, the fact that she already knows the truth, but will he be willing to admit it, to be like, the fact of the matter is, I just want to do what I can for this city. It was like, it wasn't me, it was my sister trying to protect me. Or maybe Thea will come to Susan and be like, I was just trying to protect my brother. I don't want you to hurt him. So, because I know what your tactics are, I know who you are, that you'd put a story first before looking out for the better interest. Because if you out my brother as Green Arrow, he can't continue doing his job, helping the city as both the mayor as well as Green Arrow. So, a very good episode, and just like constant reminder of just how much Prometheus essentially has Oliver by the throat. So, and also a little peek at the past, we have Anatoly and Oliver dealing with the whole Gregor situation, which kind of ends off with a standoff in the sense of like Gregor's got a gun to Anatoly's head. So, like I said, wasn't too much heavy development in that part, but just a little bit. Oh, and also completely almost about to slip like the whole Dinah situation, where it's like she's kind of picking up the mantle. At the very least, she's wearing the mask. She's like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be all comfortable wearing the costume, because it's like, because for her, she's like, there's a lot she has to live up to, and it's like she doesn't want to just, I guess, she doesn't want to end up trying to replace Laurel so quickly. She kind of wants to ease herself into it, because it's like, it's a lot of pressure, because it's like, there's already this person, because that was the whole thing before Dinah joined and everything. It's like, you have this perfect image of the person who's going to, no one will ever be good enough to replace Laurel, so it's a lot to live up to, I think. And, more so than anything, it's like, she knows what it's like to lose someone, and she doesn't want to kind of come in between and just kind of try and take Laurel's place. Which even, we see the situation with Quentin, because even Oliver's like, yeah, I'm thinking about calling her Black Canary. Is that okay? He's like, the fact of the matter is, as long as she lives up to Laurel's legacy, I'm fine with it. Which even he tells her himself, like, the fact is, Laurel would want someone to kind of take up the mantle and continue the work that she started. So, also, she got brought into the police department too. So, now that I'm thinking about it, like, her and Oliver are the only ones. No, because Renee has one now. But, like, they're the only ones that have day jobs. He's the mayor, also the Green Arrow. Renee is Lance's, the deputy mayor, the assistant to the deputy mayor, also, Wild Dog. So, now she's a cop during the day and also a superhero at night. Very much so, kind of close to Barry, since Barry kind of works in law enforcement, too. So, Like I said, a very good episode. I'm very excited to see where next week's episode goes. Like I said, with these new developments. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legion. A big part of this episode is diving again further into David's mind, trying to figure out more and more about what his powers are, because it's like as it goes further, it's like, oh yeah, definitely, like, yeah, we know about it, but now Melanie and them are discovering, it's like, oh, not only are you telekinetic, wrong word. Not only do you have telepathy, but you are also telekinetic. You can move things with your mind and everything. And then obviously we brought up before the whole teleportation ability he has, because they were like, wait, where are we? It's like, oh no, we're back in the real world. It's like, wait a minute. He just moved us like a crazy amount of far distance. And not just himself, not just a machine he was connected to, two other people, just showing you just how much, like, it's crazy because it's like every episode you're discovering more and more. It's something that was actually brought up last episode that we're seeing more. Like when he originally saw Amy last episode, it seemed like there was like a ghost image of him. And he kind of does that this episode, but he ends up bringing Sid with him. Now, to me, I'm looking at as like, is that some kind of astral projection ability? But then I'm thinking like, it's not, I don't think it's actually astral projection. I think it might be, but to me, I think it's like he can't quite 100% teleport, so his physical body isn't quite there, or maybe he's actually using two abilities at once, astral projection as well as teleportation, because the moment it kind of wore off, they ended up inside of the water in Summerland, the river in Summerland or whatever. So it's kind of like a lake, I guess is probably the better word, but it's like, what the hell does that mean? Like, it's hard to say what that power is. And also that guy, I think his name was Walter. Apparently he has a past connection with Melanie, because she ends up talking about the fact that Summerland was built by her husband. Basically, he was gathering up, mutants, kind of make this a special place where people kind of basically be themselves. And it seems like Walter was one of them. And he was able to see Sid and David in whatever form they're in. He was about to touch and he was like, okay, what's up with that? So, like, I'm very interested to see, like, what exactly that 100% is. Also, other things that came up. Well, for one, there was a whole situation with David breaking into his doctor's office. Like, obviously, there's that memory at the end of the episode where basically he was stealing drugs from him. Obviously, he also stole the tapes. Part of me was also wondering, like, because the last episode I brought it up, I was like, oh, the Division got to his doctor, beat him up to get the tapes and everything. I'm like, but now in this episode, I'm thinking about, I'm like, wait a minute. Could it actually be that the person that did that to him, his doctor, was actually David? That basically his doctor came in and found out David was stealing tapes and stealing drugs, and David kind of flew into a rage and beat him up or something like that. Which is like, I mean, David kind of spends most of his time high, so it might be a situation where it's like, his mind's kind of playing tricks on him. He can't differentiate between reality and what's just in his head. So I'm thinking like maybe that's what we'll find out next episode, that he actually did that to him. That just kind of randomly popped up in my head, because it's like, the only reason to beat him up would be to find those tapes. But it's like, as we can see, it seems like David might have destroyed them. Maybe, like I said, because even Sid brings it up at the end of the episode. She's like, I don't think those are memories. So it's like hard to say like even what's really a memory and what's something that, because even Melanie herself brings it up, that it seems like David's mind is protecting itself. It's erasing memories. It's blocking parts of his memories. Like I brought up last episode, like there's kind of a jump cut. Like, when he had a session with his doctor, and then like Potomi had to be like, yo, we'll run that back. I was like, do you see that? Like there's time missing here. Do you see that flash? And so I don't know, like, and there's also the fact that like there was that moment in the doctor's office, that wall started being ripped open. There's that red light and those hands are coming through. And Sydney's like, are you not feeling this shaking? Are you not seeing that? Because none of them could see that yellow eye thing, the devil with the yellow eyes. That's why I'm just going to refer to him as. Or I might just simply start referring to it as yellow eyes, which, just because it's a name I'm already associated with because of supernatural stuff. But nevertheless, I'm like, they even inside of his head, they can't see it. So it's like, is it like, it makes, because it almost seems like, it's kind of something brought up before. It seems like David's mind has a mind of its own, that it's kind of its own thing, that it's hard to say whether David's 100% in control, because he even brings up something interesting to Sid. He's like, everyone's telling me I'm sane, but what if they're wrong? And I'm thinking like, maybe they are, maybe legitimately, because his power is so overwhelming that basically David is a little crazy. Hence, like, I'm bringing up the fact that, because, to me, like, I think that's why I thought that the reason, because I've never looked up too much into Legion. Like I said, I picked up stuff here and there from what I've heard from other people, and I'm thinking that maybe the reason why I think that like the way David's power is going to eventually work, him assigning personalities to certain abilities, is because hence his name Legion, all the different people that would be in his mind. I don't know why it clicked in my head like afterwards, like, oh yeah, that's why they call him Legion, because of that. And it's like I said, I don't know whether that's just me inferring or is that just because I actually heard that from someone. I get the feeling like I heard that. I've brought that up for like the past 3 like episodes about that, but it's like that totally has to be a thing, right? Like I said, it seems even more so going forward, especially because of the way his power activates in the sense of like, and I love the fact is it's always Lenny that keeps popping up. She's like, really? You're going to trust him? Melanie over there has secrets upon secrets. And he's like, wait, what are you talking about? I think on some level, David's mind, obviously he has the power to read minds. So maybe he's already read Melanie's mind and knows that she's keeping secrets. But that power, like obviously he doesn't have access to his power. So there's like different parts of him kind of using his powers at will. That's why so much is happening all at once with him. But it's like, it's so messed up in the sense that Lenny's even saying like, oh yeah, you gotta be careful. There's probably all those guys that have your sister are probably gang banging her right now in her cornhole. And it's just, and then like she turns into Amy is like, please help me, David, before they hurt me with their heart. And before she could even get to the next word, it's like, dude, wait, what? And also all the conversation, it's not like he's having them outside of his head because, you know, Carrie's running tests on him and everything. And it turns out that a part of his brain that's like access is basically like, oh, it kind of lights up and it's active when he's having a conversation, but David's just sitting there. All that conversation he had with Lenny was all inside of his head too. So it's like, I really appreciate that. It's like, why specifically Lenny too? Why her? I guess she was kind of like his best friend, you know. I guess that's a big reason behind that. I also love the fact is that there's a whole conversation between Sid and David about like switching bodies. It's like, yeah, I'll admit I had to go to the bathroom and everything. Yeah, I didn't really do too much. I was like, obviously, you know, I grabbed, you know, your breast and everything just because it's like, you know, I couldn't help it. It just, you know, it's an opportunity and everything. And then Sid was like, yeah, I kind of, you know, she motions like she was jerking off. And he's like, wait, with my, really? And she's like, no, not really. She's like, I should have and I could have, but I didn't. She also said something very interesting that I thought was kind of interesting. Is the fact is that she believes heavily in the soul, that basically all your body is flesh, that there is something as a soul. She knows because she transfers to different people's bodies. And when she goes to other people's bodies, she brings along herself. So all she is all this flesh is just flesh. Like all that she is, because she's like, oh, I think she said a Chinese man, a woman, a 5-year-old, and she was always still herself. But I am very curious about why it is that she was able to see inside of David's head, but not Melanie or Potomi, because it's like you would think out of anyone Potomi would be able to, but it's like, I guess it's like a combination of David's power, you know, kind of running wild and just fear itself that kind of, because obviously he has like a crap ton of psychic power, so it must be pushing Potomi's powers away. Or at least like pushing them back, because there's even points where Potomi's like, yo, I can't actually get us out of here. Something's not right. It's like, because every time they go deeper into his mind, it seems like things are getting worse. Because even Melanie was like, we have to kind of, and normally I'd want to slow down with situations, but she's like, she's even scared because she's like, honestly, she was admitting it. She's like, the fact is you're the most powerful mutant I've ever seen. The fact is I want you to be healthy and happy, but yes, I want to use you as a weapon going forward, because it's like this war we're fighting, we're losing. And then we also have the situation, since I brought it up earlier, Walter, since he is with the division, it is kind of a circumstance where they are probably having other mutants hunting mutants. It does seem like that kind of situation. It does, I mean, obviously we'll probably get an answer to it, but it does make you wonder what went down for Walter to be working with the division instead of with Melanie here in Summerland, and also what other secrets is she keeping? Because apparently like her husband obviously built this whole place, but also like that coffee machine as well as the elevator voice, that's her husband. So it's like, what went down with him? So many questions. And also there was a whole situation about Amy, you know, because he's like, oh, you know, something was always different about your brother, but you didn't want to admit it. Like all the weird things that happened, like, oh, you leave him in a bath one minute and then you just happen to turn around and the next moment he's outside. Like you always knew something was weird, but you had your brother locked up and, you know, sent to Clockworks and stuff like that. That to me is kind of what I'm thinking about the whole doctor situation really quickly. Like I brought up that fact is I think he beat up his doctor. I think his doctor's name was Bull. Yeah, because I remember I made that whole thing of being like, oh, it's kind of interesting. His name is Bull for obvious reasons. But then it was, And not for like, oh, bullshit reasons. I mean reasons as in like, oh, because, you know, the TV show Dr. Bull, you know, Bull, if you didn't catch that. Because I brought that up, I think, last episode, but if you didn't really understand what I meant by that, that's me clarifying a little bit. Because he referenced the fact is that doing bad things. I feel like, yeah, bad things, getting high and stealing, sure, but then at the same time, I'm like, he must mean something much worse. Did he kill someone or hurt someone really badly? And because it's like, you know, being a monster isn't a noun or something. It's something you kind of have to work your way up. You have to do something so horrible to be a monster. And because he didn't want to sit inside of his head, because like, oh, you'll see some things I don't want you to see. So I'm thinking maybe that might be one of those things. Because it was like, the whole point was to find out like what led to him getting locked up in Clockworks. And it seems like to me, beating up your doctor would be one hell of a thing. I feel like stealing drugs and everything is one thing. I just feel like it'd be a lot more. I don't know. And on top of that yellow, I think, demon, we also have, because I was looking at it, like, we see that person with the big head mask on. It looks like a little boy. I was like, what is up with that? And he's seeing it everywhere, too. I'm like, and then I saw the book. I was like, oh, it's the boy from the world's angriest boy in the world. It's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, are they, like I said, brought up, like, Sid is saying, like, the fact is his, like, it's hard to say that those are memories. Or, like, what if his power is just creating a world of its own? Like, basically, it takes things that he is familiar with, but it also switches it up so that it's like, hey, this is what, it's kind of, it built its own, like, his mind built a reality within itself. I think I don't remember if I brought this up last episode. What if that yellow eye thing is part of his powers? Like, what if it isn't him running away from some monster that has invaded his mind? What if that's what his power's truest form looks like? Or at least it represents kind of the power, part of his powers that he fears. I feel like I might have brought that up last episode. I'm not 100% sure. And maybe the angriest boy in the world kind of represents something else besides just, I mean, I don't know. There's the whole thing about his dad, because obviously you see Melanie like walking up the stairs and you look and you see his mom and his dad and they all both turn and look at Melanie, but it's like you saw his dad's face to a certain degree, but it's like, but any other time when it comes to like his dad or at very least someone reading the book to him, so is that not his dad? Is that someone or rather something else? Like what, like I said, there's so much. Like could that be someone that's invading his mind, someone very powerful, maybe not as powerful, but maybe it's someone that wants to use him like a weapon, much like Melanie. Because there was even that point, kind of going back, is Melanie, when she put her hand in the book, it slammed down shut and it broke her hand and the thing was sneaking up on her. But obviously they woke her up in time and she was in pain and everything. She's like, oh, my hand, my hand. And she sees her hand. She's like, wait a minute, wait, what? And it's like, no, it wasn't real. But it's like, the fact of the matter is she felt like it was real. Like even when she woke up, she was like, oh, my hand, my hand. But it's like, because like his powers are so good at warping your own perspective, your own perception, that it seems like, I don't know, it's crazy. I'm very interested to find out. Like obviously we're just getting into like the steps of like, oh, this is what his powers is, and it's like I said, with every new episode we're learning more and more about what he's capable of, and it's like, man, like I said, I think that's the reason why like you're bound to be crazy with that much like brain power. Like obviously it's going to do something to your head having all those powers. Like I said, I'm super curious about that whole teleportation, astral projection, whatever that is, especially because I like the way it looks, because you see him floating up and then it's like a blue light and then going boom. Also, side note, speaking about powers, we did kind of see a little bit about the whole Carrie and Carrie situation. It is the fact is that he kind of split into another version of him. It is kind of interesting. It's like a copy of himself, but in the form of a girl. Like, were they twins or something that fused together or what? Also, side note, was this the first episode they used the word mutant? Because I was literally sitting here in this episode, I'm like, the fact is, have they not used the word mutant yet? And I was thinking, I mean, maybe they did in the first two episodes, and I just don't remember. But I was like, I don't remember them ever using the word mutant. And literally, you have 2 minutes later of me having that thought, you have Melanie being like, oh, you're the most powerful mutant. I was like, never mind, there it is. Because I was starting to think, I was like, do they not have rights to the word mutant? Because I was like, that's going to be kind of weird going forward with this show, because the whole premise behind it is mutants. But then I was like, no, because it's a Fox, it's FX, so it's obviously Fox, so they definitely have rights. That's why they're making the show in the first place, is because they have access to all the mutants. So, I mean, not all mutants, because, certain people don't. I mean, comic book wise, obviously Spider-Man falls in that category, but it was like, they just enhance, I guess, is kind of what they're going to use for him going forward in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But even though he is actually a mutant, I mean, from the very beginning, he's always been kind of interesting, because he doesn't his powers isn't a natural mutation, it's an outside mutation. I mean, I guess it's kind of similar to like Luke's situation too, because he kind of got his powers from like a science experiment going on, at least from, that's based around what I know from well, no, because it happened in Ultimate Spider-Man and also Luke Cage, so that probably is a big part of his backstory of like it being an experiment. But nevertheless, going on, don't dive too deeply outwards in the other expanding Marvel universe. I mean, granted, it's kind of separated and in this grand sense of things. I figure I might as well do it. I shouldn't be too afraid to do it because I do it all the time with DC stuff. So why not do it for Marvel? Why not treat them just as equally? But overall, a very good episode. Like I said, that psychological theme, I'm loving it. It's easily one of the best parts of this episode. Just diving in, not being able to tell what's real and what everything means. It's just you get these fragmented puzzles, and it's like you're figuring it out just with everyone else figuring it out, because it's like David's coming into terms with what he is. And it does make me wonder, did Amy always have some idea of what her brother was? Or was she told to keep quiet about it? Or was she just like, no, like maybe she thought she was crazy. So she's like, no, there's no way, my brother's just crazy. He's just disturbed, I mean, maybe she did it out of love, or maybe she had like her own ulterior motives to why she did that, But even the guy's like, oh, we want to help your brother kind of shut him down because he's in a dangerous spiral right now that basically he's kind of could easily basically implode because like just his powers are going a little crazy. So that's definitely going to be interesting going forward to see what happens. I wasn't expecting them to outright torture Amy like that, apparently putting like it seems like leeches on her all over, kind of messing her up bad, but also her finding out about her brother being an outright mutant. That was just kind of interesting to me. It's like, oh yeah, your brother has psychic powers. It's like, wait, what? But it wasn't like outright, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're crazy or something like that. It's like, no, she didn't respond like that. So it makes me think maybe on some level she did know, but maybe she was afraid to admit so, because maybe she thought if she did, if she acknowledged all the weird stuff that happened around her brother, that she'd know, no, I'm not crazy. He's just crazy and weird. So so many questions. I'm loving this series. Just cannot wait to hopefully get some answers to this going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.